The camera zooms into a silent classroom, rows of students hunched over textbooks, fluorescent lights buzzing softly. In the back corner, a girl sits still. Her thin fingers wrapped tightly around a pencil, her head slightly bowed. She doesn't speak, doesn't smile, doesn't raise her hand. No one knows her name. She's the girl who walks the halls with her hair covering her face, who eats lunch alone and leaves before anyone else. But today, in front of everyone, something will change. Something unforgettable. Because when a bottle of ink rains down on her scalp and everyone laughs, expecting her to cry, she does something no one sees coming. She slowly raises her stained fingers to her scalp, smears the ink deeper into her hair, and with a faint, chilling smile, she whispers, "Now watch." And that's when everything begins. Mira had transferred to Greenwood High 2 months ago, but it felt like 2 years. She moved from a small mountain town where people greeted each other by name, where the sky looked like a painting every evening and the wind smelled like pine needles. But her mother's job, freshly landed after months of unemployment, had brought them to the city. A second chance, her mother called it. A new beginning. For Mira, it was something else entirely. A ghost life. Every morning, she slipped through the doors like a shadow, sat at the back of every class, and pretended she didn't notice the stares or the whispers. In Greenwood High, silence wasn't safety. It was a target. She wasn't like the other girls. She didn't wear branded shoes, didn't post selfies at lunch, didn't fight to be noticed. She simply observed. Quietly, carefully. And that's what made her a mystery. A threat. Something the popular kids didn't understand and couldn't control. They started small. A knock of her books onto the floor. A tray bumped in the cafeteria. Comments just loud enough for her to hear but quiet enough for teachers to ignore. The worst were Savannah and her group, 3 girls who wore confidence like perfume and wielded cruelty like a weapon. They didn't just tease. They studied their victims first, watched them, found their cracks. But Mira didn't crack. She picked up her books. She wiped off her spilled food. She never looked up. That drove Savannah mad. "She thinks she's better than us?" Savannah told the others. "You know what that means. She needs to be shown where she belongs." And so, they planned it. Quietly, cruelly. The art teacher had just stepped out. The class was busy sketching perspective grids when Savannah stood up, hiding a small plastic bottle behind her back. The dark blue ink had been stolen from the supplies cabinet. Thick staining, impossible to scrub out. She strolled toward Mira's desk, her voice light and sing-song. "Hey, quiet girl, what's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too stuck up to talk to anyone?" No answer. The class giggled, a few phones lifted secretly. A boy near the window muttered, "Savannah, don't." But she did. With a flick of her wrist, the cap flew off and the ink poured like a stream of midnight over Mira's head, down her hair, soaking her scalp, dripping onto her paper. The silence was absolute. Someone gasped, someone else laughed nervously. Phones captured it all. They waited for her to cry, to run. Mira didn't move. She sat frozen. Then, slowly, with an expression unreadable, she reached up with 2 fingers and ran them through the ink in her hair. She looked at the dark stain on her hands, then pressed it to her cheeks. War paint. And she whispered just loud enough for Savannah to hear, "Now watch." Savannah blinked. "What did you say?" But Mira didn't repeat it. She stood up. Her eyes finally met Savannah's, and they didn't flinch. Later that day, Mira was called to the principal's office. Not Savannah. Not anyone else. "I heard about the incident," said Principal Marks, a tired woman who had long given up trying to understand teenagers. "You provoked her." "No," Mira said calmly. "You smeared the ink in your own hair." "Less," the woman sighed. "Why?" Mira smiled faintly. "Because I wanted her to see me." She was suspended for 2 days for disruptive behavior. But she didn't argue. She simply walked out of school, went home, and sat at her desk. She opened a locked drawer and pulled out a sketchbook. Every page was a story, pages and pages of art, raw, emotional, powerful. She flipped to a blank sheet, and she began to draw. 2CHPRTWO, the return was silent. She walked into school the following Monday with clean hair, a plain hoodie, and no expression. Savannah saw her and smirked. Back for more. Myra didn't respond. She didn't have to. That evening, an anonymous Instagram page appeared. Ink and spoke in its first post. A detailed comic sketch, a scene identical to the ink-pouring incident. Savannah's hand raised, ink flying mid-air. Students frozen in shock. The caption, "Silence isn't weakness, it's control." Within hours it went viral at school. Students whispered in the halls. Someone posted, "Yo, who made this?" Another, "That's our class." And another, "This is better than anything in the yearbook." Every day, new panels appeared. Detailed art telling stories of students who had been humiliated, isolated, broken. But in the sketches, they weren't victims. They were heroes, fighters, survivors. And they all bore one symbol, a dark smear across their face like Mira had worn. One of the posts read, "They tried to drown me in ink. I turned it into armor." By the end of the week, the account had 3,000 followers. The school paper begged for an interview. The art teacher left a note on Myra's deskie. "Come see me after class." That day, Principal Marks summoned Savannah. "You've been reported for multiple bullying incidents. There's video evidence. We're investigating." Savannah tried to deny everything until she saw herself illustrated on the latest comic panel, caught mid-smirk, dripping bottle in hand. Mira watched from a distance, arms folded, calm as stone. The same students who once laughed now avoided Savannah. And for the first time in weeks, someone sat next to Mira during lunch. Her name was Zoe. "Hey, are you the artist?" she whispered. Mira didn't answer. She just slid over her sketchbook. Zoe opened it, and her eyes widened. Inside was a drawing of her crying alone on the school steps last month. In the sketch, someone had placed a jacket over her shoulders. It wasn't real. It had never happened. But it was the version of reality Mira had chosen to create, one where kindness wins. Zoe swallowed hard. Can I be your friend?" Mira looked up. For the first time she smiled. The story didn't end with applause. There was no viral news coverage, no trophies. But something far more powerful spread awareness. Students began standing up for one another. Teachers took bullying reports seriously. Mira's art was added to the school's annual creative showcase. She never asked for recognition, but she got something better. Visibility, respect, belonging. One afternoon, a girl tapped Mira's shoulder, a freshman with trembling hands. "They poured soda in my bag," she whispered. "Can you draw me?" Mira nodded. "What do you want to be in the drawing?" The girl wiped her eyes. Stronger. Mira opened her sketchbook and began to draw. Because that's what she had learned, pain could be ink. Ink could be armor. And silence could be louder than any scream. If you knew how to turn it into a story. And now the whole school was watching.